introduction. Thank you. And Mike, thank you for that. And really, you know, the work that American Experiment does is actually phenomenal. Mike is right. Our offices were firebombed in the middle of the night. We share the same office, and we share the same office now. In fact, if you think about all the conservative work that's happening in our state, and they put a satellite heat map over this, our building would be like red hot because the work that we do with Takecharge, with Upper Midwest Law Center, and obviously the Center for American Experiment, it is the building that does a lot of that work here in our state. I'll share some of it tonight. But let me just say, first of all, I am so honored to be here tonight. I'm glad I'm here to spread the message of our party, the Republican Party, the party of hope, the party of freedom, and the party that unapologetically embraces our faith and the foundations of our country that were built that way. So with that said, you know, normally my wife is here with me, and she couldn't make it tonight. We actually started a private Christian school in the first ring suburb of the Twin Cities called Richfield. It's right next to Bloomington. We wanted to give poor and working class families, their kids, an opportunity to break the cycle of poverty, because unfortunately our public schools now under Tim Walz is not doing it. So we said, look, Americans don't complain. We actually do things, and we make things happen. We don't just complain about things happening. So my wife and I, we're part of that generation of doers, leaders, and she extends her greetings on my behalf. I'm extending her greetings from her. So let me just share with you, whenever someone sees my wife, they look at me, they do a double take, they look at her, they look, how did a guy like that get someone like that? Well, I say, well, I did it the old-fashioned way. I met her in high school and I never let go. And so let me just share about that. So I had a good friend that wanted to take Sheila to the prom, but he was too shy to ask for himself. So he came to me, he said, Kendal, would you ask Sheila to go to the prom on my behalf? And Cedric was a good friend. I said, yes, I'll do that, Cedric. So I went to Sheila. I said, Sheila, Cedric's a great guy. Would you consider going to the prom with him? He's a neat guy. He's going to treat you right, treat you like a lady. She said, no, that's okay. Just tell him thank you, but no thank you. And so I felt like I at least owed Cedric a second attempt. He was a good friend. I didn't want to go back with just one attempt. So I went back. I said, Sheila, you need to reconsider. Cedric's a great guy. He drives a Ford Mustang GT. You're going to go in style. You're going to get there fast. She said, you know what? I appreciate it. Thank you. But tell him that I appreciate it, but no thank you. Well, at that point, I felt like I fulfilled my fiduciary responsibilities. And I stepped out of that role. And I said, Sheila, a little birdie told me that you're free for the prom. And like Paul Harvey used to say on the radio, now you know the rest of the story. And so Sheila and I, we dated together through high school and college. We got married after college, and we're working on 40 years of marriage now. Thank you. And trust me, look, that applause is for her. And we have 5 kids. We've raised 5 kids together, and all 5 have come back. They're here in the state of Minnesota. We have 2 grandkids. So we have a vested interest in making sure that we win this election, and so we can make course corrections so they can stay here, raise their children here, and be productive here, just like this next generation. So my work in this campaign is for the next generation of Minnesota. Save it now, but for the future of Minnesota, okay? So I thought what I'd do, let me make sure, I think my thing might have timed out on me here. It always works when you push the right button. There we go. All right. So what we're going to talk about is the history of the Republican Party. We're going to bring it home right back here to Minnesota. But it's important for people to understand who we are as a party, what we're about, and thank you. There we go. All right. Who we are as a party, what we stand for, and why it resonates regardless of race, regardless of your background. The principles of the Republican Party are universal for everyone. We just do a lousy job of marketing and selling it. And this is one of the reasons why I got involved. Career in marketing and sales, my life value has been built on these principles here in my Christian faith, and unapologetic about it. But I think this is helpful to get some history around it. So the kids, you young adults here, trust me, this is like worth 3 college credit hours that you'll never get in a university, in a public university today, because they don't want people to know the truth. So let me just share with you this, that people have been gravitating and running and fleeing to Republican-led cities, counties, and states for 150 years. And I mean that sincerely. So if you think about 1900, this is 35 years after the Civil War, the Republican Party, all the northern states, remember obviously, right, the Civil War? But in the Republican-led states was the Industrial Revolution was happening. This is where all the economic prosperity was. Okay, this is where the opportunities were. People want economic opportunities, number one, by and large. In fact, in the early 1900s, we had a wave in Europe come over 5 million. This was a huge influx in the early 1900s. And where did these people go? They went to the industrial states of the north, the prosperity states, the northern states, the Republican states. They didn't go to the Democrat states. They were slave states. It was a backwater. There was no opportunities there. In fact, so much so, even black Americans in the early 1900s moved north. Economic prosperity, equal opportunity, okay? They want better schools for their kids. This is our history that they don't like to talk about. Okay, it is true. Millions. They call it the first wave of the Great Migration. And so, if you go from the early 1900s to the 1950s, this is one of my favorite presidents, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was confronted with one of the conflict in his administration was the Cold War. How did he fight the Cold War? This is a man that commanded the largest military in the history of the world on D-Day as an Allied commander of Allied forces. Largest military. He didn't confront the Soviet Union with armed forces. He confronted it with our faith in God. He said the way to beat communism is our heritage and our roots in the American tradition is rooted in faith in God, and communism and socialism is rooted in an anti-God platform. The state, you get your rights, human rights, from the state as a socialist and a Marxist. But in America, we get our rights from inalienable rights from God. And he's reminding Americans about that, even so much so that one of his close unofficial advisors was Billy Graham. They were good friends. Billy Graham advised him on spiritual matters for our nation under Eisenhower, in our Pledge of Allegiance, and God, one nation under God, was inserted under the Eisenhower administration. The National Prayer Breakfast started under Eisenhower's administration, has been part of our nation's history ever since. Under his administration, before I got in office, less than half of the American people attended church on a regular basis. When he left office, 68% of Americans attended church on an annual basis. He reminded Americans, when we have problems, we don't turn to Washington, D.C., we turn to our God, and we turn to American roots of grit, and we handle things ourselves. And so what happened, though, during that time of prosperity, one of the most economic prosperous times of our nation's history, after World War II, the 1960, the children and grandchildren of those people up in the northern states, they forgot where that economic prosperity came from, or they were never taught it. They just assumed that it just always happened, and they started electing Democrat leaders, Democrat governors in these northern states. And this is about the time when I was a kid, when my parents divorced. My dad came back from Vietnam, and we moved from Fort Campbell, Kentucky to Harlem, New York, where my grandparents lived. In the northern states, that's when we started to see spikes in crime in Chicago, New York, Detroit, that didn't have that before. Democrats, a lot of people just think, well, they're the same side of the coin. It doesn't matter what the difference. There is a big difference. Republicans believe in the rule of law. Democrats just they have more compassion for the perpetrator than they do for the victims. We see that today. Look at, I don't know if any of you, raise your hand if you've ever been to San Francisco. San Francisco is one of the prized jewels of our country as a city. It's one of the best ones in the world. I got a chance to visit there in the early 90s. Beautiful, beautiful city. That they have destroyed what San Francisco is. It's no longer the crown jewel in our nation. Every week they got to clean human waste off of the sidewalks and the streets in public arena. It's become a cesspool under Democrat leadership. California used to be a prize state itself, and it used to be bipartisan, Republican, Democrat. Now it's a one-party state, and Tim Walz wants to do the same thing in Minnesota. I'm not going to let it happen. Same thing with Minneapolis. Same thing with Minneapolis, and we know all the stories about the George Floyd thing, and we'll go through this. I give you this reference. In October 2009, Forbes magazine rated 40 cities for the best quality of life and the safest city. Minneapolis ranked number 1. We're going to get it back. We're going to get it back. But I just want to let you know that. So here, again, this is history of a party. After Eisenhower, Nixon ran, he got 32% of the black vote. I'm going to do a little history tour of 32% of the black vote, really. You know, and he wasn't like the most attractive Republican, party. Even I kind of didn't rub on him well. But here's a little historical sidebar. This is the history of the black community from after the Civil War to right before LBJ's war on poverty. 80% of the black community were two-parent families. They're considered hardworking, work ethic. They were Christian foundations. You can characterize them as a culture rooted in faith, family, and education. They wanted a better education for their kids than they got, right? In fact, and he wrote a book in 1907. This is Booker T. Washington. He wrote a book, Negro in Business. And in 1907, he said, by 1900, 22% of black Americans owned their own home. Think about this. In 1900, this is 35 years after the Civil War. These are either former slaves or children of slaves. 22% of them own their own home. 70 of those 22%, 74% of them owned them outright. He said it was a culture of thrift, hard work, and wanting their own personal responsibility. And in the 1950s, in the 1950s, there was a real estate journal. This is a quote, that top bullet point is a quote from a real estate journal. Hey, if you want to increase your business as a real estate agent, go find black families. They're the new middle class. This is before LBJ's war on poverty in the 60s. The second bullet point says, in Time magazine, there's signs of Negro prosperity everywhere. This is still when segregation was happening. Still, rising tides lift all boats. That was happening in our country. This family on the right, these aren't stock photos. The family on the right, that's my father-in-law. He was in Memphis, Tennessee. Those children are Sheila's, my wife's 3 older siblings. He wound up having 5 more, 8 kids. When he retired, actually he served both in the Vietnam War and the Korean War, 30 years in the Army. When he retired, he wound up leaving tens of thousands of dollars to his children and grandchildren because he came from that pre-LBJ culture before the culture was destroyed. Things were happening in a positive way in this country, and people say, well, what happened? Well, many of you guys know this, under LBJ, the first time in American history that the federal government financially incentivized women to have children outside of marriage. The only way you can get any of these government benefits, monthly stipend and subsidized housing, as long as there was no adult male living in the home. They used to have social workers going around and check them in apartments and people's homes to ensure there's no adult male living in the home. And after 5 generations of that, you see a distinct decline in marriage in the black community to its lowest level of any ethnic group today. Out of wedlock births skyrocketed, and these people that was supposed to be leaders in the black community, and what we find out later, they're all socialists and loyalist Marxists. They used the black community to gain wealth, status, and influence. Because there hasn't been one initiative, not one initiative, to reverse the trend of basically marriage in the black community. There hasn't been not one, not on the NAACP and not in any of these organizations. In the Twin Cities, any given year, anywhere from 85 to 90% of children in the black community are born without a father in the home. And look, I've never been involved in politics. I'm 5-6 years into this. And I'm going, at what point are you going to raise the red flag or sound the alarm? When it gets to 99%? Are you kidding me? Nothing. And what they've done, especially, this is one of the reasons why I got involved in politics. When they started screaming white privilege and systemic racism as the reason for the disparities in the black community, I said that's a lie. The number one reason is the fatherless home crisis in our communities, in our country. And they were pointing the finger while they let this happen over 50 years. And so I decided to get involved. So to set the record straight, on the left was the segregated time. There were literally jobs that my father-in-law couldn't apply for, especially in the South, even if they had 100 vacancies, even if they were qualified, like these kids on the left. But today, the issue of disparities is the fatherless home crisis. Now, here's what I can tell you. This is a picture of my dad. I know it's kind of blurred. He was a drill sergeant in the Army. This is him smiling. Okay? If I were to walk outside to hang out with my friends, dressed like these guys on the right, and my hand touched the doorknob, and my father would say, "Hey, Kendal, where you going?" "Well, I'm going outside to hang out with my friends." Well, the only thing left of me would have been my hand on the doorknob, because there would be no Kendal Qualls left at all. I would have been a missing kid on the milk box. Fathers don't let their kids walk out like that. We have a fatherless home crisis in our country that's expanding beyond the black community, but it started 50 years ago and has never been addressed. And we're doing it with our nonprofit organization. We're the only organization doing this on a national scale, reversing this trend of two-parent families. So we do polling data in black communities. I'm going to tell you, most black Americans, they said the federal government should be incentivizing two-parent families instead of single moms. That kids are not getting a good education in the public schools, and that parents want school choice. No organization in the black community is advocating for these two things. What the rank and file people want, they're not getting it because of political motivations, and is rooted in socialism, in most cases, in a lot of cases, Marxism as well. Like I said, none of these organizations promote it. So anyway, we're going to go back to the historical nature, and I'm going to get back to why I went through that detour to explain this for the Republican Party. Now, when we look at what's happening across our country, you can see the out-migration of the states where people are leaving the most. This includes businesses as well. Okay, of the migration that's leaving across the country, the top 10 states, 9 out of 10 are Democrat-led states, not blue states. I want to name them Democrat-led states. Where are they going? They're going to Republican-led states, 8 out of 10 of them. Even in our states, the people that have left the Twin Cities, they've gone to county-led, Republican-led counties, where they've gotten out of the blue counties. Now today, it's so ironic. Again, it doesn't matter where Republicans govern. Now we make up the Confederate states. There's been basic flip-flop in our country of where Republicans have led. And it's so ironic that we're in the North 150 years ago, now we're in the South. It doesn't matter. People have been voting with their feet. Our job is that we have to do a better job of connecting the dots for them. Many of them wind up voting the same way the blue states they left. We got to connect the dots. You're here because of economic prosperity, your kids are going to get a good education, and you live in safe communities. Now, we typically have, as a Republican Party, it is the person at the top of the ticket that galvanizes so much support, so much energy, we have a down ballot windfall. The Democrats, on the other hand, they have a machine. They can get people that hate the country elected. And that's not a euphemism. That's not literally. The woman in the top left, Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, she flies a Palestinian flag outside of her office in Washington D.C. And we know about our friend here, Ilhan Omar. And the machine of the Democratic Party is different. So what that means for us, especially in a state where we're divided like this, that means that we have to work stronger together as a team if we ever want to win statewide. So here's the opportunity before us, and this was last year, right before the election with Trump. Newsweek quoted that Trump is getting more black votes than any Republican probably in the last 50 years. So I'm going to see if this works with the audio.
In 2008 and 2012, you voted for
Barack Obama.
Barack Obama.
2016,
I voted for Donald Trump.
Hillary Clinton.
2020,
Donald Trump.
Biden.
and who will you vote for in 2024?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
You may vote for the former president.
I may.
Why do you say that?
My views on certain things have changed. I am very much so riding the fence.
What are you struggling with?
Being in a pattern of doing the same thing that I've been doing, because it's kind of like second nature. Like when you go in a poll, you hit Democrat. Something has to happen. I mean, it's just so expensive to survive. And we're planning on having kids. I don't want to live in a stressful environment trying to rub two pennies together to try to make it either.
And this is very similar to the message that Charlie Kirk was giving to have families. And when people have families, they're going to lean more toward our policies. So I went to a Hmong festival this summer, and the Hmong community, 100,000 in the Twin Cities, 100,000 in the Hmong community. And they have been voting traditionally Democrat only because the Democrats have been present with these people for a long time. So I went to this festival, and I get there, and obviously Hmong, and we have a Republican booth, and I'm looking around there going, oh my gosh, these are our people. Well, why do I say that? Because I'm looking at all the guys, and they don't have one or two kids with them in their strollers. They got the wagons, the big wagons now, 3 or 4 kids on average. None of them have less than 3 kids. And I'm going out there handing out my card, talking to these guys, man, you're with us. And you know what? These principles of the Republican Party permeate beyond ethnic lines, people want freedom, they want opportunity, they want to raise families. We're the party that does that. The Democrats, they're just going to make it harder. They're going to try to give them stuff and keep them as almost slave property, slave mindset. So this is the platform that I have, and it's really the platform of the Republican Party, economic prosperity. That means the burden of taxes and regulations that we have right now that is moving so many of your friends and family to South Dakota is wrong. Tax policies shouldn't be burdensome. They're meant to make sure that your community, your state, that people are thriving, that families are thriving, and they're providing the needs and the services that the counties need and the state needs. That's it. So here's our challenge that we have as the selection of a candidate to win statewide. First of all, as candidate, we want candidates with core conservative values. Okay, think about this. We want a candidate that can actually unite the party, raise enough funds, and energize the electorate, right? We also need someone that broad appeal that can win in the suburbs and swing voters. So you think about this Venn diagram. I think the goal for us is not to find someone that you like the most. I mean, and I get it. You know, we get candidates we like. We want them there, but not just candidates that you like, or who's the most conservative, or who can really debate who can actually win statewide, and encompasses the principles and the admiration that you like the most. It's really how do we do in that middle section of the Venn diagram that we can get. And I think if we focus on that type of thing, we identify that candidate early, get behind that candidate, we'll win statewide, and we have an opportunity. So let me just share with you. I talked about this earlier with someone. You know, in our state today, if you talk to anyone outside our state, they just think Minnesota's lost. It is lost. You can just forget about it. It's never going to happen. It's a pipe dream even to win the governor's race. But let me just tell you, from my background, I've been leading marketing sales teams my entire career for 30 years. I've been an officer in the Army, and we leaders can actually see things beyond. They're supposed to see things beyond that doesn't exist yet. See victory when it doesn't even happen yet. And so when you think about the Democrats, they outspend us 8-1, the Republican Party. They control the media, they control higher ed, and they even control K through 12, everything. But in our state, they only have a 1-seat majority in the Senate. And we're tied in the House. You would think there would be a much larger majority of their electorate. It's not. Minnesota is still, even though we have so many people left, we're still a pragmatic, centrist state. If we work together as a Republican Party, and we get this kind of candidate, we can not only win the governor's office, we can win the Senate and the House for the first time since 1969. And I'm telling you, I believe this is the time to do it. And so for those of you that believe in God, and I do, God comes in with a miracle when things are at its worst. And my friends, I think times are at its worst that we've never seen anything like we've seen before. I mean, these guys are glorifying someone getting murdered and celebrating it. That's never used to be our character. We have a governor that's calling a sitting president a fascist. He has no idea what a fascist is. First of all, he got elected legally by the electoral college vote, the majority of the electoral college vote and the popular vote. They are purposely fomenting division and hate by saying those words. I'm going to make him pay for that. He knows better. An elected leader should not be calling the sitting president something like a Hitler or a fascist when he's been elected by. He's not insulting the president, he's insulting all of us. He's insulting the American people. How dare you? We're going to make him pay for it. And all of those reporters that should know better and should be challenging that statement, should be challenging that word coming out of their mouths. No one's a fascist in this country. We don't have no kings. People have been elected into these roles, and they deserve the respect that is given to them by the American people. Now thank you for that. I'm getting ready to close it out. Guys, I want to leave you with this sense of hope. In this country still, that the promise of America is available to everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of their faith. That a kid from Harlem, like me, grew up in a broken family, that lived his first 5 years, first grade to fifth grade in Harlem, New York, in the late 1960s, early 70s, and then moved to a trailer park in Oklahoma to live with his dad, and the trailer park was an upgrade. Found his wife in high school, never let her go. That's me with hair, by the way. Served in the military, we got married, and I wasn't even a Christian at that time, that someone invited me to church in Dallas, Texas. It only went because it was a family friend, that Tony Evans that never heard anyone taught the Bible that way before. It changed my life. Literally changed. I got baptized in that church a year later. And then through my corporate journey, Max Lucado was one of our pastors. And then Joel Stoll used to be president of Moody Bible College in Chicago. We just had some great discipleship, Sheila and I. And we raised our 5 kids. We adopted one of them. I can't remember which one because I love them all the same. And now we've got 2 grandkids, and the legacy of what we have, it's a blessing. And I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that we get our state back for their future, for your future, and the future of your grandkids as well. The sacrifice that our first Republican president made, thinking about the sacrifice that Charlie Kirk, you know what? We sacrificed the most for freedom and liberty for our country, for everyone to enjoy. And I want to make sure we continue to do that. So that's in my book. If you're interested in that, that's great. But listen, guys, I love you. If you love this flag, if you love this country, I love you and I'll fight for you. And we're going to make sure we get this state back. Thank you so much.
Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Lyon County, Minnesota Republican